So we do have all four of our legislators. If you check out the agenda here, I can go ahead and introduce all the folks that we have on today, and we're going to do kind of a legislative recap and a panel. I've got some prepared questions, and then we could probably open it up for questions as well. But today we have Representative Andrew Barkis, ranking member of the House Transportation Committee. We also have Senator Deborah Krishnadasan. I think I hit that one right. Vice Chair of the Senate Transportation. We have Representative Adam Bernbaum, Vice Chair of the House Transportation Committee. And we have Senator Matt Boehnke, ranking member of State Environment, Energy, and Technology. But I've been told that Matt was also, Senator Boehnke was also prior on the Transportation Committee, and I know he participates with our Benton Franklin Walla Walla Good Roads and others, and is taking, is very involved in transportation issues as well. So I know Senator Krishnadasan has to take off at 11 o'clock or 11:30, excuse me. So I wanted to kind of throw her out there first to answer a couple questions for me, because I know she's been on for a little bit listening to Todd's presentation. So if she has any thoughts around Todd's presentation and what she's been hearing, but also this is kind of the opening question I wanted to ask all of our folks on the panel today. But looking back at the 2026 session, what transportation investments or policy decisions are you most proud of, and where do you feel the legislature fell short? So that's going to kind of be the opening for all folks, and I wanted to throw it out there to Senator Krishnadasan to answer that and maybe elaborate on what she heard from today and anything else before she has to jump off at 11:30.
Yeah. Thank you, Billy. And thank you to Todd for that presentation. I have sat through similar presentations on the Transportation Committee, and every time I see those statistics, I see where we are with preservation and maintenance across our state, you get sick to your stomach. I come from a school board where I worried about my 9,000 students every night as a school board member. Now, as a vice chair on transportation, you worry about a state of travelers on roads and bridges that are failing and that are well beyond, some poor conditions. And again, those are just, it's not a good situation to see. Something I'm very proud about this past session, obviously, is the commitment to preservation and maintenance. We have to do that investment as we continue to push this work out. It is getting more dangerous. It is getting more expensive. And it's making, the kind of prioritized project list incredibly challenging to manage, because you're constantly being reactive to the next failure and repairing that versus really going after focusing on preserving, making sure we don't have these emergent situations. So very happy to see that investment in preservation and maintenance. Additionally, I think right now in particular, that investment also will bring a commitment to predictable and reliable jobs, so that our workforces can be prepared in developing that workforce and knowing that they're going to have jobs down the road, that they can put those folks out and get them to work. I think that's really important right now in our state. I mean, as always, but that's really critical. Some of the work I've done over the last 20 years is preparing people for those kind of jobs through career technical education in our high schools, committed to West Sound Tech in Bremerton, to support that workforce development, really important. Where I think you said, Billy, fell short. I mean, I think we could have done more. We made a commitment to do 3 ferries. I think we could have increased the ferry commitment. I think we could have done more with bonding, that we scaled back a little bit. But I am glad we held strong on the preservation and maintenance. And so I think I answered all of your questions.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, no problem. And like I said, if you've got to jump off at any point, feel free. We really appreciate you joining us today. And again, I know you jumped on a little early and got to hear most of Todd's presentation, and look forward to partnering with you, in future meetings, for sure. So, Rep. Barkis, same questions. Transportation policy decisions that you're proud of, things you think might not have gone, you kind of fell short on, and yeah, take it away.
Well, good morning. I think it's still morning. Good morning, everybody. And Billy, thanks once again for hosting with this great group. And it's a privilege to be here with you all today. I missed most of Todd's presentation, but if you can bring up my presentation, it's only 145 slides. So we can get started now, and maybe by 6 o'clock tonight, we should be done with my top priorities for the next year or so. Great stuff, Todd, and I appreciate. I want to start by just acknowledging the great work that WSGRTA's doing on a myriad of things. As Todd said, you move one boulder, another one falls, and it's all over the state. I get, as you can imagine, a lot of emails wondering why a certain road's not open or something else, and I just defer it over to them. I say, hey, that's on. Those guys are fixing it right now, but the intricacy of stabilizing a slope is not something you do in a day. So the fact that they got that done in 30 days and is really impressive. Well, it's no secret. I think we had a good session. Coming into the 26th session, I was excited about possibly having what we were calling a boring supplemental budget session, where we could make adjustments following what I believe was one of a big budget that we did in 2025, major revenue package, a continuation on maintenance and preservation funding. And I want to emphasize that this is not something the legislature has just all of a sudden discovered. I think the work that Chair Fye and I and others have done both in the House and Senate have been focused on maintenance and preservation for a long time within the resources that we have. I'm extremely proud of the work that we did in the House. No offense to the Senate, but I am really proud of the work that Chair Fye, Representative Bernbaum, who's on this call, Vice Chair, and the team, our staff, did in crafting a supplemental budget. And we started out crafting this budget not to utilize bonding. No secret. We feel that there is a need and a time and place to use bonding. We're going to have that need and time and place very shortly for a myriad of things that we need to address in the state. And so we sought a different route, and that was to look at our resources, how to maximize, how to best do our budget. I think the budget work that we did in the House was some of the best that we've done in a long time, looking at existing resources, looking at reappropriations, looking at how the money is spent, looking at how we can smooth and redo these things while working with the agency. And as Rep. Bernbaum knows, we found those dollars. We found the dollars to not only implement the aggressive paving, requested paving program for the remainder of this biennium, but also to set aside over $500 million for maintenance and preservation moving into the next biennium. The only thing we didn't do is, we weren't in that 6-year outlook window, but we had a plan. And as a result, that House budget passed off the floor of the House unanimous. So I think it was the benchmark of the session for me, and for, I'm sure Representative Bernbaum and Chair Fye would probably say the same if he was here. We did good things. I think the commitment that we've shown reiterates what we believe in the maintenance and preservation. I think that, of course, as you get into the latter part of session and reconciliation with the Senate, pressures of leadership, pressures of other issues that were way outside the transportation realm when it came to taxing policy and everything else, that I think really put the pressure on the fact that we couldn't be in an impasse and we needed to resolve. And thus, the agreement by some, not myself, to go ahead and put forth the bonding proposal, although a modified bonding proposal to use those resources to dedicate to maintenance and preservation and other things. So In the end, it was a win. In the end, the resources are there. Now it's up to Todd and the team to implement that, and the proof will be in how that actually goes. And yeah, I think it was slide 105 or whatever it was that shows how they're going to do that. If in fact we do, we'll know, because when we come back in January and we start our work again, we'll know with reappropriations if in fact we're spending the money that we put in place. So I think that I'll stop there. I know Boehnke will talk even longer than I will. So, but I do have a lot more to add when it comes to priorities. There's just so much, you guys. Just last week I went back up to Carbon River and went out to the bridge again and talked to the people out there. So look forward to talking about that issue, how we can prioritize, and definitely, as was brought up by I don't remember who, but just recently brought up Maria, how we can talk about existing resources and what we're going to need to do to address these issues that are nothing new. This is not new stuff. This is stuff I've been talking about my entire time as a ranking member. And anybody who's driven White Pass knows that area that was shown on that slide didn't happen yesterday. White Pass has been in that condition for years and years and years. And so, the fact that we're now looking at this stuff is good, but that should tell us that maybe we didn't have our priorities quite right over the last several years. Maybe those priorities are starting to line up. Now we got work to do. So stop there, Billy, and we'll look forward to answering your questions and being part of this today.
Thank you, Rep. Barkis. I think when Todd's presentations get a little bit longer every single time, that's that subtle hint that the seriousness of the issue is getting worse, right? So next time, hopefully it'll drop down in slides and not increase, right? So, but you guys are doing good work. Senator Boehnke, excited to hear what kind of maybe on what the representative and the senator before you said, but not sitting in those committee meetings every single day, but also being involved in transportation locally and at the state level, getting your perspective on things. So go, take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you again. Thank you for having us. Always a pleasure to be going after Rep. Barkis. I mean, knowing him, working with him on committee in the House and his due diligence and leadership. I don't want to blow up his ego too much in front of friends, but the hard work and dedication on behalf of Senator King, as well as Senator Gaynor, I wanted to share their remarks coming to you as well. I think it was a great opportunity from the Senate side of doing the hard work of preservations and maintenance as well, and echoing a lot of what he just mentioned. These are not new issues. They've been going on since when I was in the House on the House Transportation Committee, but building that out to the safety in the corridors to make sure the conditions are set right, getting our people back to work and having that continuity of an outcome that we need to have for transparency of a measurable outcome that's going after it. I truly believe some of the comments, not only Todd, appreciate that work, but also prior to with the kickoff. I think it was Charles who was kind of bringing up some of the initial setting the stage for where we're at, for measured outcomes, for let's look at transparency, let's look at some of the trade-offs that we're seeing in our state budget. Because budget drives priorities, and those priorities need to be back to the preservation and the maintenance. From my other part, being ranking on energy and environment technology, leveraging the Climate Commitment Act funds, I think was a bold move, and I think a smart move when we come to, and I would challenge you again, ensuring that we're meeting the investments where those investments actually make that commitment to what the spirit of the law says. So those are preserving, the fish passage programs we've had for a while. Let's get that taken care of. Let's get the bridges that Todd has mentioned. Let's do that. Let's be transparent about tying that bonding into the first durable assessments and those measured outcomes that we want to see. And then let's be open about it and then saying, let's put that commitment in place and then all come together. I think it's a bipartisan support we can do. But what they were bringing into is what's happened in the Tri-Cities. One of the local ones that we worked on was 395 as well, of slowing down traffic. And that was a novel concept that some people looked at us and said, why? But we were having a big accidents in a safe zone just north of Pasco that people were dying at a high rate. And then we responded really well. So that is my lead into a big kudos to Todd and the efforts of continuing to beat the drum that this is important. To safety is important in our streets and our roadways, but also the miles that are on our highways. From my time at the city council meeting, to ensure that we are tied into local governments as well, and bringing that grassroots prioritization up to the state level, and then coordinating those efforts, not only in the plans, because we have a lot of that, but we want to make sure we're efficient in the plans that we're doing. With that, looking forward to some of the, I guess that's the good and the bad. The big win, I guess, for ours was the SB 6066, the crash prevention zones that is really going to be impact right now. And again, the kudos to you guys. When we have an outage on a bridge, we have a response team that gets out there. And I know they're not on the call, but the individuals who drive the trucks that get out there, the people that work for WSDOT and the others that respond in the quick amount of time, in probably the worst conditions that we've seen with the flooding we had in Western Washington over this last couple of months, I think needs to be continue to beat that drum of how well we responded in that situation, and continue to share the great work that the men and women do for our state. With all this going on, we do hear that we want to make sure that's in our committees. We want to make sure it's out throughout the Senate, and working to share with the House some of these issues and where we can coordinate on to move this forward. So yeah, standing by, and I guess I'll turn it over to Rep. Bernbaum for the next part. But thanks for having me as well.
Thanks, Matt. Or Billy, do you want me to just take it away?
You could go ahead and take it away, and I was gonna throw you a bone if you wanted to add to anything you've heard, but also talk about. I'll throw the first one out there to have you talk about what you're focused on in the interim as far as transportation issues that you want to bring into 2027.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and I don't think I have a ton to add. I do want to say that I think Barkis and Phi work in a tremendously bipartisan way, and I think that the House Transportation. I also felt very proud of the work that we did on the with the House Transportation budget this year. I think it was a genuinely challenging problem to come up with a balanced budget. The At one point, and I don't recall who found this document, but we found a report. A staffer found a report from I think 2005 or 2006 that was basically saying at the rate at which we're spending that this is unsustainable. We will not be able to afford, given the revenues that we project, the maintenance on the system that we're building. Um, and this was prepared in response to some project. I don't remember what it was that ended up going through, and we've continued down that path. And so we are at a point where we have to make a decision that's challenging. It's challenging for every representative. It's challenging for the memberships of the people who are on this call to be able to say no. And it means having uncomfortable conversations back in district, I think, for everybody. Everyone has transportation projects that, in particular, if you are a ranking member or a vice chair or a chair on these budgets, it's not easy to say, hey, I have this position and I'm not going to be able to deliver this thing that you want. But it's also how we end up with a responsible budget, is a bunch of people agreeing collectively that we are going to say no and slow our roll to some extent. We need to catch up on maintenance and preservation. That work has started. And so that kind of segues into what I'll say about interim. I'd like to dig into a couple things. One has to do with increasing the efficiency of the deployment of some of the federal dollars, in particular the STBG dollars that are moving out through the Federal Fund Exchange Program. I think that there's a universe where we've had some time to see whether or not the kinks can get worked out, but we need to sit down with WashDOT and the counties and make sure that those dollars are flowing either through local programs as it's organized now or through an alternative vehicle. And those should be friendly conversations, but we've got to make sure that progresses. I think that we should politically be having some honest conversations about things like the RUC or the HUF. We need to make sure that we have the revenues in a sustainable way, and that we're collecting them in a way that reflects the ridership on our system today. And if more people are driving EVs or hybrids, either we need to make sure that the fees that we're collecting from them go up, so the revenues we're getting are proportional to the costs they're generating, or we got to make sure that we have a different way of collecting revenue from that class of vehicles, because we want this budget to be balanced and sustainable. And I think that one of the really satisfying things about working on it this year and about working with the community of people who are engaged with the transportation budget is that there's a recognition that having a sustainable, balanced budget means we will borrow less and we will have more to spend in the long run. And I think that culturally people understand that in this space and recognize it. And I think it has made it easier to have some of these conversations around thin years, which really are conversations about trust. It's asking a bunch of people who have every right to tear the house down and say, hey, we're experiencing a lot of pain, and people working together and saying, all right, maybe everyone doesn't get what they want now, but it means we all get more later. Um, so those are a couple of things that I'm thinking about for next year. I'm eagerly anticipating the result of the mediation. I'd love to see where we land there. I'm not sure whether that's going to get done before the session or not. But that's something that I'm following very closely. Um, and if that work does get done, I'm looking forward to participating in the planning for how we can make sure we get the culvert work fully funded and finished.
Great. Thank you for that. And I'll throw it over to Rep Barkis. Same thing. Kind of what are you looking forward to working on in the interim to bring into 2027?
Well, the Rep Bernbaum hit on a couple things that were really important that came out of the work that we did. It just is amazing. We had 60-day sessions are hell. I hate them. You do the same amount of work you do in a long session and a short session, just jamming. And in reality, we've got about 40 days to do the budget work. So, all of us collectively were working really hard. And one of the things that came out of the work that we were doing when we were looking at the resources, right? A lot of data. And when we're looking at programs, whether it's local programs, whether it's some of the other things that we are tasked with. So, like Todd said, they don't make the decisions on what the money, they tell us what they need. Well, they need to tell us more what they need, I believe, because I think part of the problem, I'm a little off task here, but part of the problem with some of these things, like I said, none of this is new. Fairfax Bridge, my big thing we've been talking about 20 years ago, kind of knew that it was on a collision course for failure, right? So in my 10 years, I scoured, I was trying to find information and say, where did I ever receive anything across my desk that said, hey, this needs to be a priority for this session. We need $10 million now to fix this bridge. No, I couldn't find anything. So one of the things that came about when we were doing the budget work was looking at these things. You find that you appropriate X amount of dollars that are needed in a program, and about 40% of those dollars are implemented. Okay. So then we do a reappropriate. So why aren't we spending 80 or 100%? Why aren't we delivering on that? And so we found that there are a lot of encumbrances. Is it new policy? Is it regulatory? Is it federal? Is it state? All these things impact the ability for WashDOT to carry out what it is they want to carry out. This is the same thing on a local level. So when we did that, it was really interesting because there you start to find the dollars. You start to find, well, maybe this program that we've allocated 100 million for, maybe we only need to allocate 50 million this biennium, so we can take that money and put it over here where it is getting delivered, right? So I think Rep Bernbaum and I and others, we were really digging into that. That's some of the work that we're going to continue to do this interim as we start to dig into other programs. We did it on a kind of an example. I think Bernbaum, I think it was program, I think it was the local programs is where we kind of did that. And then we also started looking at some of the grant programs in the Move Ahead arena. I question why we have $300 programmed in Move Ahead for bicycle education. Okay, wrap your head around that. Bicycle education is super important, part of active transportation. But do we really need $300 million allocated for that? I would say no. Many of my colleagues said no. Probably a lot of you would say no. So it made us kind of look back at that and say, well, maybe they only need X. And so we can reappropriate, we can move those dollars around. These are existing resources within the allocated revenue sources that we have come in. Prioritization, how do we prioritize this? Complete streets, I mean, all these things. In my neighborhood, Thurston County is building a beautiful roundabout on an intersection that really needed it. It's about a $7 to $10 million roundabout. I've never seen something more over-engineered in my life. There are 6-foot sidewalks with the most beautiful historical lighting, a giant stormwater retention pond. These sidewalks go nowhere. There's no foot traffic out there. Why are they mandated to build that type of facility there? And maybe it would have only cost $4 or $5 million to build. Therefore, Thurston County might have had an additional $3 or $4 million to build another roundabout somewhere. These are prioritizations. These are the things. But I think one of the big things in the interim is, of course, the ferry system. I am glad, another success, that the governor and those with good decisions decided to pump the brakes on the conversion of the hybrid electric existing ferries. There's some further conversations, a study, all these things that we're doing to look at what are we going to build, how can we build it faster, how can we build it in Washington? I think that's a big deal. How are we going to do these different things for our ferry system, looking at the existing revenues and things to do that? Maybe we need to take a look at reducing emissions using traditional propulsion systems, right? Because if we don't spend $1 billion to electrify all these things, that frees up $1 billion that we can fix bridges throughout the state of Washington. Okay, so interim is already busy. I've already been traveling around the state. My travel schedule, I was just talking to my staff and my personal staff, I'm in my corporate office. I actually run a business too. My free time is packed because there is so much demand to go out and see and gather information. And we haven't even set up the schedule yet to start to work on the ferry conversation and other things that we need to do. So interim is going to be really busy to set us up for success as we move into the next session.
Before I throw it over to Senator Boehnke, thank you, Rep. Barkis. I'm going to open it up for questions after we hear from Senator Boehnke. So if you have any questions after he goes, you can raise your hand or put them in the chat. So go ahead, Senator Boehnke.
Sure, and I'll defer to Senator Krishnadasan if she needs to run, if she is still here.
I think she jumped off, but if she's still here, yeah, I think she jumped off.
Okay, just allowing that opportunity and kind of following on what Rep. Barkis was mentioning. I think the prioritization, and he mentioned it, from the source session to now, we've already kind of hit the ground running right after session. I don't know about you guys, but I think I had literally a day to get from Olympia back here, chill out, and then you're going right into the next meeting because that's the importance that we see in our communities and the accountability for us as elected officials to work with you on really educating ourselves on what the interim needs to come back to and where we can have the most return on investments that we need. He already spoke to the ferry, so I'm going to focus more on the modernization of technologies that I think we need to build into our processes. When you go into design and going after the different criteria, especially when you're doing the different federal programs, matching that up to where we can prep with those designs, we can get those done quicker, faster, better, maybe leveraging artificial intelligence, looking at areas of modernization of our structures in the process would help us shorten those timelines, but still continue to keep safety, continue to keep the engineering in mind and making sure that we're moving the ball forward. Rep. Barkis mentioned a couple others as well, as to not over engineer projects, to make sure we are streamlining, to make sure we're focusing on those priorities that we need to have to ensure that we're going after what we say we're going to go after, and then leverage that piece to incentivize. I know it's a crazy term in government, but we can then incentivize others to meet that whole need. If we can do these within a timely manner, maybe save some costs, leveraging those areas to what we can from our communities, and that piece of looking further and faster with maybe some AI tools, I think would be some of the front of mind. I know that takes education on legislators' part, at least understanding where we can, and I've seen some from the federal government. Working with the trucking industry this weekend, even down in Pasco, we had frontline individuals who are incentivized to go at the national level of our safety on the roads, when it's driver safety, the labor safety, the things that we got to continue to have the safest workforce, the workforce environment that we have out there. Putting that into play, I think gets back to our number one still is where we can find the efficiencies on clear objectives within our priorities in the budget, but modernizing those to where we can allow you and the engineers that work for you as a team so we can collaborate better in the dashboards we see in that data, and then extrapolate what those data really means to help us make better decisions down the line is be some of my top of mind ideas. And then I defer back to Senator King and Senator Gaynor, who've been working a lot of pieces within the Senate on how we can work forward on the innovations, whether we're going to move the gas tax to the road usage charge, how those are coming in for us, and a lot of those discussions as well. But happy to be a part of this team on the energy side of that as ranking member, where we can leverage. If we're going to be electrifying the system, those are some of my concerns as well. And tying that into the energy piece, if CCA dollars should go somewhere, they should be supporting transportation projects in that effort to kind of do that cross-pollination where we can cross-level out, going after that better process, the better emissions controls, and really streamlining the efforts we're doing in these projects and helping you get the wins that we need in the state.
Thank you, Senator Boehnke. And yes, we've got a lot of trades folks on here, so we're all about grid expansion, right? So, but I will throw it over to Vic and then Brian. Vic, you got a question?
Yeah. Let's see, Representative Barkis, you mentioned the roundabout and the complete streets and the over design, and I think that's a direct result of the recent complete street legislation that is very, very broad. And I'm wondering if you've got any thoughts about how to put some guardrails on the complete streets legislation that allows for some flexibility of like not building 8-foot wide sidewalks in places with no current pedestrian activity.
Victor, absolutely great question. I do. As a matter of fact, we've had legislation that we've proposed. We just can't, we haven't had the push behind it that is necessary to elevate it up to change, right? And I think that it's going to have to. I'm not opposed to complete streets. I'm not opposed to some of these things that need to be done when we're looking at corridors that need that safety, where we need sidewalks and ADA accessible and all the various things that you need. But to see this roundabout, knowing that, I mean, the sidewalk signals are everything's that there will be no people walking on this. I guarantee you. I've lived there for 27 years. I've driven that road. There's no connecting sidewalks out there, guys. It's like putting a roundabout on a state highway, which we did on Highway 510, about another mile from my house. And literally the sidewalk goes over the cliff. I mean, there's nothing there. So you have to be able, the WSGRTA and local jurisdictions should be able to have that say, that bandwidth. They're the experts. The engineers are the experts. They look at it and say, this is what we need to facilitate a safe intersection. And then someday, hey, maybe there will be bike paths out on Mullen Road and we can build those sidewalks, right? So, Victor, I think that is just one of probably 4 or 5. We have the HEAL Act, we have environmental justice, we have climate policy, we have, I mean, pick one. They all add to what Todd and his team have to implement. You know, they don't have a lot of choice a lot of times because it is coming directly from the legislature and is saying, hey, guess what? We changed things. This is the type of roundabout you now have to build. And he's like, well, we don't really need to, but I guess if that's what we have to do, we'll do it. But, you know, when you start looking at the breadth of need in this state and the limited resources that we have to do that. You know, we just have to. The project in Yelm, the Yelm bypass, bids coming in here. Todd, I'm so excited. Literally a couple days away. We're going to start construction. We are 6 years behind on that, and that thing is going to cost about $30+ million more. And in the time that we've been messing with that, the rules, regulations, and requirements have changed multiple times where they've had to adapt for it. And as a result, it takes longer and it costs too damn much. Those are two very, very true correlated items.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, representatives and senators, for giving us this much time. Good Roads is 126 years old. I think Vic and I were probably the only two original founders that are left, but we're grateful to be here, continuing to push this issue of good roads. And in my 50 years of this, Vic's probably got a few more. The two trends I've seen that have made the biggest challenge for delivery, and that's the whole goal. You want the money to go in, you want the product or the service to come out. Engineers have got that figured out pretty well, but in the last decade or so, there's been a huge increase in legislative oversight and accountability and constraints that have prevented the experts, as you say, Representative Barkis, from doing the right thing that they're trained and experienced to do. And I would say one of those areas that's probably been the most problematic for DOT, I was there for 26 years, and it was a frustration for me, is that the legislature appropriates minutia. And I know you do it because you want to get votes for a revenue package, and it's part of the political process. But when you do that, you can't deliver the project or the program because DOT is doing it all with handcuffs. They've got to deliver this project at this date, at this budget, in this location, with absolutely zero flexibility. And the world changes. The projects accelerate, they delay, they expand, they move. And if DOT, the experts, don't have the flexibility to move the money with it, then you're automatically designing into the budget non-delivery. We're just not going to deliver. I mean, when I was there, 85, 90%, even 98% delivery was pretty common. And now it's almost unheard of, just unheard of. So that's my advice from 50 years of watching it. Take off a few of the constraints on the project level appropriations, and I think you'll see a huge increase in delivery. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I'm going to chime in because that's what I do. Brian, I agree, but I would also say, in my time as a ranking member with Chair Fye and the work that we've done, we've removed a lot of those constraints, or at least we've attempted to, based on the input from the agency itself, right? You all have heard me say the age of the transportation package is over. But what happened this year? What did the governor do this year at the beginning of session? All the lead work that we were doing, Bernbaum was part of this. We were all working before session started on the supplemental budget, not a revenue package. What the governor dropped on us was a revenue package. It was a bonding proposal for specific things, right? Call it maintenance and preservation, but really specific. How do you assure you're going to pass that, Brian? Takes votes. You have to have a majority vote. And in the end, that's exactly what happened again. It was a negotiated thing. Did it fulfill the requirements that WSGRTA had for what they needed? I would argue probably not. Yeah, it filled some buckets of money, but in the end, it was no more than just another revenue park. It even had a name, Preserve Washington, right? We got to stop doing this. If we want to talk about long-term sustainable funding, and WSGRTA wants to, participate and provide us the necessary lists as the legislature on priorities, like I've been asking, I even put it in the budget. I tried to. I think it's still in there. Maybe the governor, a list of all the bridges. We need to know. We need to know what these things are so we can do that, right? I mean, we're asked per the budget that comes to OFM and the governor presents to us, and then the legislature works off, is a decision package. It's like program P needs X, and we need X amount of dollars in it. Well, then we got to find that. Well, what are you going to do with the money in program P? You're going to spend it, program I, program, whatever it is. That's how we budget. And I would say that Chair Fye and I have really flipped it on its head since we've been doing this. we dig. We want to know exactly what it is. And it's not about putting more control or restraints on the agency. It's about making sure we're appropriating the right amounts. Because what we have had to deal with is that we do that based on the information. We leave the legislature, and 5 months later, we get an email saying, hey, guess what? X project you appropriated has now got a 40% increase. And we're going to need 40% more dollars. That was our situation 2-3 years ago on a multitude of projects when we were scrambling around trying to go, oh my God, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? You're moving stuff around, and ultimately something else suffers unless you fill the coffers again with what we did in 2025, and that was increasing the gas tax again, right? So I agree with you, Brian. I think that, we want to make sure the agency has the flexibility to deliver. And that's absolutely the goal, is to get this stuff delivered. It shouldn't take as long as it takes. And there's a myriad of reasons that would take all day for us to unpack why it takes so long now. It probably didn't. I mean, Todd's been there a long time. Ribner's been there forever. I'm sure 50 years ago when it didn't take this long to do stuff. And you know what? We have proven, because unfortunately the state has had just a plethora of emergencies here in the last 6 months, that when it's an emergency and a magic wand is waved by the governor declaring it as such, we get shit done. We build stuff fast. We repair bridges. We do all sorts of stuff super fast. But if that project on I-5 in Bellingham was something that was discovered and put into play, I guarantee you, if it hadn't have fallen, it would take years and years and years to put together a plan and everything else to carry out that same project.
Yeah, just thank you, Representative Barkis. I think we're on the same wavelength here. Billy, I just want to last comment, and then I'll turn it over to Will. I will say 2 decades ago, the state made a difficult choice and a very painful one, and one that has set you guys up, you the legislature, for failure for the last 2 decades. And that is, they made the Secretary of Transportation accountable to one governor instead of 7 transportation commissioners. I think you got better budgets. They were more deliverable for the DOT, and the state won because of that. Right now, we've been laboring under this very, very politicized DOT, and they're torn in too many directions. So that's my closing remarks.
Agree.
Thank you. Yeah.
Will, before you go, did Senator Boehnke or Rep. Bernbaum want to add anything to Brian's original question? Okay. Will, go for it.
I just want to thank the ranking member for bringing up how we did things 50 years ago, because 50 years ago I voted for the creation of the Department of Transportation, and I don't regret that vote. The thing that I want to ask is, and I don't want you to treat this as a rhetorical question, because it is a sincere question from someone who's had the privilege of serving in the legislature, being a ranking member of Revenue when I was, or the chair of the Revenue Resources Subcommittee when Helen Summers was chairman of Revenue. And I understand that it's difficult work. But the governor came to you. Well, Todd's presentation indicates we need $2.5 billion per year to return us to funding of maintenance and preservation, to return us to a sustainable state road system, including the marine highway component. The governor asked you for $3 billion, which is not $5 billion every 2 years, and you cut that in half. How are you going to return us to a sustainable system if after 25 years of systematically and chronically underfunding the state's most valuable capital asset, you cut in half an already inadequate number that comes from the governor? What was your thought process with Representative Fogg?
Thanks, Will, and thank you for your service over the years. As I said before, Will, you've got the historical perspective. This did not happen overnight. I've been doing this for 8 years. I've been serving the legislature for 10 years. There has been a singular perspective for 30 years plus in Olympia. I'll leave it at that. And priorities are based on that. I couldn't agree more with Brian. You politicize, you put it in a certain thing, it changes the dynamics. Transportation should always be and should remain bipartisan. It should remain non-politicized because it just shouldn't. But look at the policies that have been put in place in the last couple of years. I mean, we're talking about environmental justice. We're talking about all these things that are political in nature, dealing with roads and bridges. Okay, and it complicates things. So I'll tell you what our thought process was. It's that I think transportation has been treated like the stepchild a little bit, and I don't think I think maybe it's a bad analogy, but the dominating conversation in the legislature is not the transportation budget. It's the operating budget, right? And it's I won't even go there, right? But as a result, you have a secondary budget, that's transportation, right? We started talking a long time ago about, hey, we need some of this money. We had surpluses, billions of dollars of surpluses, and we were asking, hey, can we shift some of that over to transportation? Can we take the sales tax? We need money. We need more revenue. We can't increase our gas tax. We have the highest gas tax in the nation now, right? Okay, so we looked at these different things, and we looked at the problem as it is now in our lap, because we didn't create it completely. We've been trying for a long time. The chair and I from day one have been trying to do more on this, and we've been successful. We've had I would say successful budgets, done a lot of things. But decisions that are made impact what we do in the legislature, and most of those decisions come out of the executive branch. Electrifying the ferry fleet was a decision made in 2019, which completely changed the maritime highway. And we have no boats in the water as a result of that. And that's fact. That is fact. We had a plan, we had the money, we had a contract, we were going to build boats, we changed directions, we're going to electrify it for a climate agenda, and now we have no boats in the water. And part of the money, Will, that was asked for by this governor on this bonding proposal was to build boats 4, 5, and 6. We haven't even built boat 1 yet. So how are we going to commit bonding of billions of dollars to build 4, 5, and 6 when we don't even know if we're going to build 2 or 3 in the same manner that we're building 1, right? We're building 1, we have an option for 2, maybe 3, which we have to make a decision on here pretty soon. Those boats are going to cost us close to $500 million a piece if we continue down the road of electrification. And what's happening with time, and to Senator Boehnke's point, technology and all the things that are happening in that space, and even Representative Bernbaum, we've had good conversation on this because we thought, hey, is this the highest and best use of this to achieve the carbon goals that the state of Washington wants to achieve? Or maybe if we went back to the way that we thought about it and we can reduce emissions by 60% and get boats in the water for half the cost, maybe that's a better route. You see, Will, when we looked, that's why we said no. That's why when we were looking at this, we said, no, we don't need to do bonding today. We need to do it. We need to have that in our back pocket for the future. And the reason also is bonding is debt, and bonding is paid for by revenue. Revenue is generated by the gas tax. The gas tax we just put in place in increase, right? Index gas tax. Everybody gets to celebrate gas tax increase day on July 1st because it's going to go up again. But the increase that we put in, the 3 cents or whatever it was, over the course of time, a percentage of that has to go to dedicated revenue resources to pay for the bonding. So if we looked at bonding the entire amount that the governor want, we were going to eat up 60% of the new revenue on that revenue package from 1 year ago just to pay for that bonding on things that we didn't even know we were going to be able to do. So we said, no, we need to hold that in our back pocket. We need that revenue, that gas tax revenue for future bonding. As Bernbaum said, we're waiting on the mediation on the culverts. You want to take a guess at what that's going to cost the state of Washington to finish this? Current estimates are somewhere in the $6 billion, right? A little bridge down in Southwest Washington. When we started working on this, and it probably was being worked on when you were in the legislature. The Columbia River crossing. has ballooned to close to $15 billion. How the hell are we going to pay for that? Feds aren't going to pay for that. So we got to be really careful about how these things are going. So it's great to have these conversations about maintenance and all. Yes, we need to do that, but it has to be kind of strategic. That was my thought. That was the chair and I's thought. That was our committee's thought. And that's why the budget that we proposed this supplemental year, and let's not forget, it was a supplemental budget year. Supplemental means you are adjusting the budget, as you know, Will, that we just did a year ago. So you don't typically do a whole new budget, and you typically don't do a revenue package. You typically don't do a transportation package on a supplemental year, but that's what we were facing from the governor. But we also looked at that and said, hey, supplemental budget. And we crafted a really good supplemental budget to address all the needs now and even into the next 4 years, right? Without bonding. Budget passed unanimous. That was our plan. So coming into this next year, we're going to be faced with a lot of different things, a lot of conversations about new revenue, existing revenue. And I'm not done talking about utilizing Climate Commitment Act money. My God, we need to reprioritize that money. That is a direct impact on the people of Washington State. And I have shown time and time again, and my union friends on this call, labor, have been in my office, and I showed them $1 billion in addition that we could use.
Let me accept lock, stock, and barrel everything you've said and praise you for being responsible in making the decision not to give him the $3 billion he wanted because it was premature. Or you couldn't have spent it responsibly, or whatever the full logic was. But how do you get from Todd's department needing $1.2 billion a year to not make it worse, and he needs $2.5 billion to return it to a sustainable system? And this is our most valuable capital asset that our entire economy depends on. How do you get from underfunding by $1 billion a year to increasing it to $2.5 billion a year based on the decision that you responsibly made this year? What's going to happen in 2026, a full session, which you apparently like better than 60-day sessions? How are you going to get us from underfunding by $1 billion a year in real dollars for the last 25 years to not just making it worse by adding 1.2 billion, but in fact increasing it to $2.5 billion a year? How are you going to do that?
Well, I need a lot of political will. Will.
Well, I've got a lot of will.
I need a lot.
And where there's a will, there's a way.
I need a lot of supporters to get behind some proposals that myself and others have put forth, right? And in the end, sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. This year it didn't. What happened was support got behind bonding because, hey, we need the money. And I disagree with that. I would start looking at it. Boy, Will, I could show you, literally, if I had to have a PowerPoint, I would show you. I mean, we're spending $300 to $500 million on active transportation, building trails and things. Great for 0.2% of the population that's riding a bike somewhere, right? I mean, I think we have to reprioritize and maybe say, hey, we don't need to build a trail today. We need to fix a damn bridge. So there is money on the table in the existing pile that we can reprioritize to utilize to backfill to get to that number now, that $1 billion or whatever it is for maintenance and preservation. That's a start point, Will. But it takes, you have pressures on this, right? We can fund transit, but do we fund all of transit? Maybe transit needs to re-implement fare box recovery when they used to pay for 70% of their operating. Now we pay for it all. Okay. It's a lot of money, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, servicing about 5% of the traveling population. Okay. We need to be rethinking these things. We can do both. We can still help transit. We can still build trails. But I think that we need to elevate, and Todd and others probably won't argue with this. If they could, they'd probably say, yeah, I know that trail is great. I drive up and down I-5 every day, right? And I'm looking at the DuPont and it's awesome. It's almost done. It's going to be cool. But I also look to the left by Gravelly Beach and I'm watching them build a bike lane, you should see the engineering on this. WashDOT, it's amazing, right? I don't know how many miles that is, but I know it costs. And is it absolutely necessary that we build that today? I say no. I say that money could go towards all sorts of stuff, right? The other thing is this. We are going to have a new revenue discussion. And I would like to see if we are going to put into play not a road usage charge, excuse me. I like, and we've had conversations, the chair and I, about a highway user fee. And if we're going to do that, and we're going to take it to the people of Washington State and say, we're going to charge you more. Whew, the people I talk to right now don't feel they're getting near what it is they're paying for. But if we're going to do that, then we should dedicate that, put all the parameters and sideboards on it directly for maintenance and preservation, for bridges, for whatever else. And hopefully, working with WashDOT and some of these studies and things that we're doing, we're going to know exactly, because that number kind of goes all over the place, but we're going to know. And I would like to know top 10 bridges that need to be done in the next 2 years and blah, 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 and how we're going to do this so that it's not going to take us 50 years to redo things. The Fairfax Bridge is the example. I tried to pass legislation to give WashDOT some broader tools to speed this up. I'm not done working on that. I'm going to the feds, guys. I'm going to find a way, because I just was there. I just talked to the people on the other side of that bridge. They can't wait 5 to 6 years driving a freaking logging road to get back and forth to work, school, medical appointments. And the average age of the people on the other side of the bridge is a lot older than me, right? And I've met them, I've talked to them. If you haven't, go meet them, go talk to them, right? They're stuck. They can't wait 6 years for this bridge to be rebuilt. Anyway, a little passionate about it, but Will, I get it and I see it, and it's going to take a lot of these different things to come together to make this thing work. There is a path, and like I said, I sat in my office. I showed, Mallory knows this, she was there and others were there. I showed them $1 billion. $1 billion that could be reprioritized at a Climate Commitment Act that could go, and where there was a nexus with the climate and all that other crap. And I showed them where we could take that money right now, real money, and all of a sudden, the minute I start putting pressure on using Climate Commitment Act, you know what the legislature said today or during this session? Oh, it's a declining resource. We can't take the Climate Commitment Act. It's a declining resource. BS, not a declining resource. It's a resource that is going to be in play for quite a while. We should use it.
Could you get Boehnke to get us some federal money next year?
I'm working on that. Trust me, Rep Barkis has already asked.
I'm part of a staff apparently, so we're working on some pretty big plans on this.
Hey, well, he definitely has a hotline to me. He's been blowing up my phone quite a bit on that issue. So trust me, he's on board. And frankly, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, I mean, Bernbaum, I'm going to tell you something. Representative Bernbaum is new to our team and has been a phenomenal asset. So I'm blowing a little smoke your way, Adam, because Adam is very bipartisan, very much a thinker, really digs into stuff, brings a great perspective to our conversations, challenges the established norm, right? I mean, he really put in a lot of stuff. And I think the whole team on both sides in the House really challenged it, and we've had some good conversations. I'm looking forward to spend some time with them in May. And we'll have a little more time on a trip we're going on, but to really talk about and get into the weeds on this stuff, because those are where those great perspectives come from. It's not an R versus D or political. It's pretty big. Transportation is that wonderful world that still exists, where we shouldn't cloud it up with all the crap that is the rest of the legislature.
Well, I just want to apologize to Billy for asking the question and to thank the representative for answering.
Hey, that's what
5 slides. I can talk for a while. So, but anyway.
Thank you.
No, that's what it's about. And I know we've gone over a little bit, but I appreciate everybody's time. Senator Boehnke or Rep Bernbaum, do you guys have any final thoughts or anything you want to share?
I kept thinking I was going to have something to share, and then Barkis would cover it. So, no. Well, yes, actually, very, very briefly. I think when I think about the transportation budget, it's not like there isn't a way to do any of this stuff. It's that I think we tend to treat political obstacles as being not real obstacles, but budgetary obstacles as being real obstacles. And you've got a lot of the caucus on the D side, which isn't, it's not like they're indifferent to maintenance and preservation. They understand why it's important, but their voters are really activated and they get a lot of pressure from their activists on multimodal. And that's what they want people to talk about. And I think that of folks on the transportation committee, I imagine some of the hardest conversations this year, like I would not really want to be Julia and go back to Seattle and talk about us deciding not to give Sound Transit the authority to pursue their TIFIA loans and to say that they're going to truncate the extension of these metro services. I believe to her district. I'm not positive about that, but I think that's true. But that would be a very hard conversation for me to have. And so you have a lot of pressure for multimodal to be at a certain level. I, Somebody was mentioning this earlier. I don't remember who it was. There's a commitment, I think, to finish the projects that we start. So it's like we're going to finish the projects that we start. A certain percentage of the budget is going to go into multimodal in addition to funding maintenance and preservation. And then the question is, or it felt like the question we were really faced with was, how much do we want to borrow to cover multimodal and to extend and to pay for these ferries? And I think that a lot of people, even people who are pretty pro ferry, understood that the bonding proposal for the ferry service in particular just didn't make sense. You're talking about authorizing us to borrow money to build boats that we aren't going to build for, a decade or something like that. I thought that I thought a bonding proposal that would have where the cost of servicing debt and the time cost of money would be lower than the maintenance and than the increased cost from ignoring maintenance on a section of road. I think that bonding something like that would have made sense. We ended up doing a lot more in that part of the budget than I was expecting. I think by um, genuinely very creative and thoughtful changes to how we deal with the burn rate or adopting a burn rate model like we did in the capital budget. We did a lot of stuff to avoid needing to borrow money, which really is in the service of expanding maintenance and preservation spending long term. So I think what the spirit of the questioner here asks is we're going to come up with um, another billion plus. I'd like to see what we're going to have to spend on the culverts. We need to know that answer, I think, before we fully commit the capacity that we've created so far. Um, and then I do think that over the next 4 years, we are going to increase the proportion of the budget that goes to maintenance and preservation. And I think that a lot of people on this call deserve a lot of credit for making that politically possible. In times when we can't appropriate more money, I do think that there's a lot of progress just in the 2 years that I've been here. I think about my first session, the appetite for maintenance and preservation was far lower than it was this year. And the political will among Democrats to pursue that has gotten a lot higher just over the last 2 years. And I think that Billy and Chuck, and I'm looking for faces on this call, but I think that a lot of folks in the building trades in particular have done a great job reaching out to other Democratic legislators and saying, hey, if you believe in supporting workers and you believe in creating jobs, this is an important priority to do that. So that is also work that, as we're all talking to each other over the next year, that we should continue to do to make sure that when people are going back to their districts and they're talking to their constituencies, that they know that this is something that's important.
Yes, thank you for that, for sure. Senator Boehnke, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, and I would kind of echo Rep. Barkis for thanking Rep. Bernbaum being here, but also being a part of this. And I would share, she's not here, but Senator Krishnadasan as well. Similar bipartisan spirit throughout the meetings, throughout the session. And really, big key is communicating to the rest of the caucuses on both sides what these issues are. How do we go back to that? And I would share my goals is you got to make this a priority in the overall budget sets out there. And you got to fight that this is an important part in the governor's office, in the staffs in the governor's office, to make sure we have leadership from the top to provide us that opportunity to make sure we can get back to solving what Will was saying. How do we specifically utilize what we're going to build, have it simplified if we need to? Let's go back to simplifying our budgets, showcasing each year what are those goals and objectives, what is our key performance indicators, and are we going to meet those objectives moving forward? We talked about it's going to force us to reprioritize within that area, and the help we need on both sides of the aisle is unions, everybody concerted on a single vision, a single voice to showcase this from the cities, community efforts, and the counties, that we can have that support moving up from the grassroots to the governor's office, so we can work together supporting you on these goals. If we don't, we're going to continue down this path of wasteful spending, frankly, and it's going to create more problems. We're going to get bigger debt. We got to go after this now, or it's going to get worse. But thanks for taking the call and having us on here, Billy. Appreciate you guys being here and appreciate the team. I was going to add, I think I met Brian like 10 years ago, not 150. So as long as the good roads are still going in a couple of years, I'm still available no matter what my capacity. And honestly, looking forward to, if I can be of assistance at the federal side, hopefully in a couple of months, then don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you for jumping in today, Senator Boehnke, and good luck on your upcoming race and anything we can do to support you. I know Lionel, I'm sure, is going to be right there helping to support. Rep Barkis, thanks again for always joining and being available. And Rep Bernbaum, great to start building that relationship with you as you get more involved in the transportation space. And just thank you all for jumping on and giving us your time today.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
You bet. Have a great one. We'll see you. We'll see you out there on the roads.
Sounds good. Sounds
all.
good.
All right.
We're gonna jump.